Hello everyone and welcome to week 5 and the conclusion of the Classes of Pantheon. In case you missed it, we covered all the classes in Pantheon. Well, just a generic overview of them anyway. All those videos are linked below. Today, Blister and I are going to cover and discuss the classes, kind of the system they got going here, and we're even going to tell you what we might main when Pantheon releases. So buckle up for the ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that like button. And here we go. Alright, Blister. So the first thing I want to touch on is that Pantheon is actually going for a quaternity system is what they're calling it. Which is going to be tanks, heals, DPS, and support or utility. However, each class really seems to get some support and utility skills, but they actually have one class picked out as a crowd control class. And so what do you think of that system? We don't see that a lot in games right now. Not in MMOs anyway.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really good because thinking about other MMOs that we got right now, like Black Desert doesn't use any sort of system right now. And then the only other options are really just the Trinity systems with like WoW and Final Fantasy XIV and Elder Scrolls and all that kind of stuff. Like you have the Trinity system in one way or another in all of those games. You don't really have a true utility or true support. A lot of people nowadays consider healer to just be support. So in a sense they're supporting the whole group, but in the same sense you could make the argument that a tank is supporting the whole group by not letting anybody else take damage. So I really think it's really cool, and some like from the reading that I've done, it seems like they're gonna have some pretty cool classes. I like how there's one role just for like crowd control, like the one class, it's the enchanter or something like that.
Yeah, correct. It's the enchanter.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, I should point out that this is not a healing support, like you said. These are true support classes as well, a true crowd control class, and then true support skills that are actually buffing the party or doing things that they're not just healing, DPSing, or tanking. They're actually doing different things to buff or debuff, or just there's a whole bunch of cool different things going on here. But it's very interesting, and I'm very happy to have an MMO that's actually trying to go into that sort of system again to try to make a change in the industry, because we're getting a lot of bland stuff and I think everybody's getting bored with it.
Yeah, I don't know if something like this is going to be enough of a change in the system to make it more interesting. Like you're just gonna essentially you're replacing the role of either a DPS or a pure healer with a support class. So I don't know how much it's gonna actually affect them, because you're just gonna see it as, oh, you know, you're getting less damage out of this one member to give other people more DPS. So I don't know how much of a difference it'll actually make, but I'm hoping it does. It would be cool to see something a little bit more complex than what we have currently in most MMOs.
That's a good point, and maybe that's why we only have one true quote-unquote support class, and all the rest of the classes just get some support abilities so that you don't lose all that much. And I think they're going for a bigger party size, like 8 or something like that. So
right.
So the other cool thing I noticed in this game is resistances, or I don't know, like classes that are stronger against things. I think the big thing that sticks out to me is there's a couple classes really strong against undead, where other classes don't have any abilities for that. But I just I'm thinking that this is a cool addition to a game. I like resistances in my RPGs for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're really going with fire and ice resistance. I don't know how that would play out for like the mage and stuff, but there's definitely some sort of resistances going on here, and I think that's a great addition to an MMO and RPG for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know that a lot of people have been saying, and the devs themselves have been saying, that this is supposed to be like an old school MMO, and it definitely feels like that's what they're working towards. Because I mean, you think about like WoW back in the day used to have resistances like that. They used to have classes that were better against certain things, like a paladin. If you needed to do an undead, like if you were going to do Stratholme, a paladin was great because they did a lot of damage to undead mobs. So I mean, just right there, it's more kind of proof that yeah, they actually are going for this old school feel, even though classic WoW or vanilla WoW, whatever you want to call it, was a casual MMO back when it was released.
Yeah, it's just definitely nice to see a game going in a different direction, I think, is what we're happy to see.
Or maybe not necessarily in a different direction, but a going back to their roots and getting back to the fundamentals that made MMOs great.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of which, the last point before we jump into our mains, which I know a lot of people might be waiting for here, but we got one more point. One more thing, which is a group of a couple things here. So racial locking, weapon locking, and armor locking. These are all things that are going to be part of Pantheon, sort of like Classic WoW, where if you want to play a certain class, you have only a couple races to choose from. Some of them will actually open up. You can do like, there's one class that you could do all but one race, but there's some that you can only choose 2 or 3 races at most. So, what do you think of that?
It doesn't bother me really. I know that it could bother some people, like, oh, this is the class I really want to play, but this is the race I really want to play. But I mean, just figure out what's more important to you. Is it the gameplay or how your character looks? I mean, something's gotta be like way heavier on your decision making. So whichever one is the bigger decision that you need to make sure you just lean towards that when you're figuring out what class race you want to play. But yeah, it doesn't really bother me. I think it's good for the story. I think opening up like every class to every race kind of dulls down the classes and makes them less special. Like when World of Warcraft introduced the Shaman to Alliance and the Paladin to Horde, I feel like that lessened their importance. And the same kind of thing can be said for how there's some classes that can only be played with very few races. Like I think that's very important, and I hope that they don't go back on that and start to open it up more like WoW has done in the past.
Yeah, you kind of hit on what I was going to say, is that I think it really helps with the lore and the world building, and they're really trying to make this also sort of like a community-based MMO where you need to work with each other and things like that. So it's going to be nice to see variety in characters, variety in classes, and I think going back to the weapon locking and armor locking, I think that's just general RPG elements that have been lacking with these very, very casual MMOs that we've seen lately, where it's just basically pick it up and play whatever you want and do whatever you want and play by yourself, basically, because it doesn't really matter to us.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we're getting close to our 10 minutes mark here. I know that the people came here hopefully to see what we're going to main, and hopefully they're going to put in the comments below what they're going to main so we can chat about it. So, do you want to kick it off, or you want me to kick it off?
I can kick it off. There's if any of you have been watching Less Than Epic for any amount of time, and specifically watching the classic WoW stuff, you'll know that I really like melee DPS. So naturally, I immediately was interested in looking at all the tanks and looking at the melee DPS like the Rogue. Right now, it looks like I'm probably going to play Rogue, but I am also interested in the Dire Lord, and believe it or not, the Shaman actually looks pretty interesting too with all the buffs and stuff. I really like the Astrologian in Final Fantasy XIV, and it kind of seems like a similar role. A lot less RNG it looks like, but it looks like it's going to be very similar. It looks like it could be a lot of fun to play that class too. So probably going to play the Rogue to start with, but I might switch out to Dire Lord or even the Shaman depending on what happens with all my friends who I'm playing with.
Yeah, awesome. I picked you for the Rogue, and anybody that watched our DPS video will see that I picked him out for that role. And also I mentioned this in that same video that I really, really like the Ranger. I like playing Rangers, and I really like that this one is melee and range, so you can kind of jump in between, back and forth, and gets a lot of action going on there. I think it'll keep the tab targeting interesting, since this is a tab targeted MMO. And then if I was going to go tanking, which is one of my preferred classes, I guess, I'd like DPS to drill down the numbers and try to beat Blister, but I also like
Good
tanking.
luck with that, buddy.
I like tanking a lot, just kind of like leading the group and stuff like that. And I was actually leaning towards warrior. They feel like one of the better main tanks that you can just go out there and take hits and push people around and all that stuff. Throw out a little bit of DPS hopefully, but that's kind of what I was thinking. And lastly, like you, the shaman is interesting to me. All the elemental stuff they get going on there, it's just, I feel like a very different sort of class that we don't see a lot in MMOs. I also want to take one last thing at the summoner. Like that class seems very interesting to me because the summons are all very different and they all have their own skills and their own weapons and armors and everything that you got to do with. I want to see more on that class. They haven't released a whole lot of that class for some reason. I think it's one they're working on pretty hard right now. They are only in early alpha, so lots could change, but this is kind of where we're sitting right now.
I got a question for you though. Have you looked at the races? Figured out what race you want to play?
I haven't because I'm not big on how my character looks. Like a lot of times I'll just hit the random button a bunch of times and they're like, yeah, that looks good to me. Why, have you?
Oh yeah, I've actually been looking at the races quite a bit. The Dark Myr seems really cool, and the Gnome actually seems really cool. I know a lot of people talk smack about people who play gnomes, and especially WoW, but the Gnome is really different in this game. It's like an ethereal type race. It looks really, really cool. So I'm between the Dark Myr and the Gnome, actually.
You're going Lalafell. You're going to have to play Lalafell in Final Fantasy now.
No, what the hell? I'm not dumb.
Alrighty, guys. We're going to wrap this one up. Thanks for checking out Less Than Epic. This has been Blister and Nova coming at you with our Pantheon video. Hopefully you can throw some comments below and let us know what your mains are and what you think of Pantheon. We're going to try to keep up with this game as it's one that's pretty interesting to us since we like the old school MMOs. Have a great day, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, it's Radit here. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. We put out multiple new videos each week and we appreciate all of your support. Thanks for watching, everyone, and cheers.